Imagine waking up on the 4th of July. It's the height of summer in America. You step outside your farmhouse expecting the warm, golden embrace of the morning sun. Instead, your breath turns to thick white vapor in the biting air. The sky above you is not blue, but a sickening, bruised shade of yellowish gray. There are no birds singing. And then the impossible happens. Soft, white flakes of snow begin to fall on your summer crops. It sounds like the plot of a dystopian novel, but in the year 1816, this was the terrifying reality for millions of Americans. It was a time when the seasons simply broke. A year when the sun was swallowed by a mysterious veil, rivers turned to ice in midsummer, and a desperate, starving population watched their entire way of life wither away. Before we dive into the surreal and chilling ordeal of 1816 to uncover what truly stole the sun from the sky, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and like this video to help us keep these forgotten stories of America retold. To understand how a summer in New England could transform into an unrelenting winter landscape, we have to travel exactly 10,000 miles away, to the island of Sumbawa in present-day Indonesia. In April of 1815, a year prior to the American crisis, Mount Tambora awoke from a long slumber. When it finally erupted, it became the most powerful volcanic explosion in recorded human history, an event 10 times stronger than Krakatoa. The sheer scale of the blast defies modern comprehension. The explosion sounded like heavy cannon fire, and it was so incredibly loud that it was heard by British soldiers stationed over 1,200 miles away. The eruption instantly vaporized the top 4,000 feet of the mountain, launching 100 cubic kilometers of crushed rock, sulfur and volcanic ash straight into the Earth's stratosphere. The immediate surrounding islands were plunged into pitch-black darkness for 3 consecutive days. Tsunamis towering over 100 feet high wiped out coastal towns in minutes. But while the immediate region suffered catastrophic destruction, the true silent danger was climbing higher into the atmosphere, an invisible gas that would soon change the fate of the entire world. Over the next 12 months, high-altitude winds carried a massive, highly toxic aerosol cloud of sulfur dioxide across the entire globe. This dark veil acted like a colossal, planetary mirror, reflecting the sun's heat back into the cold void of space. The Earth was effectively plunged into a sudden, artificial cooling period. And before it even reached American shores, this cloud left a trail of bizarre and terrifying phenomena across Europe and Asia. In Hungary, terrified peasants watched as brown snow fell from the sky, heavily mixed with volcanic dust. In Italy, the snow was stained red, leading many to believe that the heavens were literally weeping blood. In China, unusual summer frosts utterly devastated the rice crops, leading to mass starvation. And yet, the people of North America, living in an era without telegraphs or global news networks, remained blissfully unaware. They had absolutely no idea that a shattered mountain on the other side of the planet had just condemned them to a year of starvation and darkness. By May of 1816, the invisible killer had finally settled over the eastern seaboard of the United States. It began with the sky. Farmers in New England and New York noticed a strange, persistent, dry fog creeping over the land. This wasn't normal morning mist. It didn't burn off by noon, and the heaviest rains couldn't wash it away. The air smelled faintly, almost imperceptibly, of sulfur. The fog was so thick and unnatural that the sun itself was visibly altered. In the middle of the day you could stare directly at the sun with the naked eye. It appeared as a dull, blood-red disk floating in a sickly, spectral sky. Sunspots, large enough to be seen without the aid of telescopes, marred its surface, adding to the mounting sense of dread. The natural order felt deeply broken. Leaves on the oak and maple trees began to wither in the spring. Birds, confused by the lack of daylight and dropping temperatures, fell dead from the branches into the streets. The heavens were turning red, the air was choking them, and the devastating freeze was yet to come. Then came June. The month that should have brought the first harvests instead delivered a lethal blow. On June 6th, a massive Arctic weather system swept across the United States. Temperatures plummeted from an unseasonable 90 degrees down to freezing in a matter of hours. In Vermont, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, furious blizzards dumped nearly a foot of snow on blooming gardens. Ponds and lakes iced over, becoming solid enough to support the weight of a man. The agricultural devastation was absolute. Newly planted corn, beans, and squash blackened and died over a single night. Desperate farmers tried everything to save their livelihoods. They lit massive roaring bonfires around their fields, hoping the thick smoke and heat would keep the frost at bay. Men tied rags and blankets around the legs of their livestock, while newly shorn sheep collapsed and died in the snow-covered pastures. But the bitter chill was relentless. People of the era grimly began referring to the year not as 1816, but as 1800 and froze to death. Every time the temperature seemed to recover, another brutal frost would sweep through in July, and then again in August. Summer never arrived and the growing season was completely annihilated. As the August frosts wiped out whatever crops had miraculously survived the earlier freezes, a new, far more immediate terror gripped the nation: starvation. The United States was plunged into its first great subsistence crisis. The price of oats and corn skyrocketed, increasing by over 700% in just a few weeks. Flour became an unaffordable luxury reserved only for the wealthy. In rural farming communities, the desperation reached heartbreaking levels. Families were forced to forage in the wild just to survive another day. Historical accounts detail people subsisting on porcupine meat, boiled nettles, and roots dug from the hardened mud. Along the coast, 1816 became known as the mackerel year, as inland farmers traveled for dozens of miles just to buy salted fish, the only reliable food source left. But the crisis extended beyond the dinner table. In the 19th century, the entire transportation and trade network relied on horses. Without oats and hay to feed them, horses starved to death by the thousands. Without horses, goods could not be transported between cities. The economy ground to a terrifying, absolute halt. The disaster was so absolute that not even the most powerful figures in the nation were spared. In Virginia, former President Thomas Jefferson meticulously recorded the bizarre and terrifying weather in his daily observation journals at Monticello. He watched helplessly as his extensive corn, wheat, and tobacco crops withered under the relentless July frosts, a devastating blow that pushed the aging founding father deep into financial ruin. It simply didn't matter if you were a humble frontiersman in a wooden cabin or a former president in a grand mansion. The invisible volcanic cloud treated every human being with the same ruthless indifference. As the months dragged on, horrifying reports began to slowly trickle in from across the Atlantic, painting a picture of total global collapse. The situation in Europe was even more violent. In Great Britain and France, the freezing rains completely destroyed the wheat harvests, leading to massive, bloody uprisings. Starving, desperate mobs marched through the streets of major European cities carrying black flags and banners that simply read, "Bread or blood." They looted bakeries, attacked grain transports, and burned down storehouses. The frozen summer of 1816 was no longer just an American tragedy, it was a planetary catastrophe that threatened to completely unravel the very fabric of Western civilization. The physical toll of starvation and economic collapse was catastrophic, but the psychological weight of the unknown was equally heavy. In the early 19th century, meteorology was in its infancy. There were no weather satellites, no global climate tracking. To the average American, there was absolutely no scientific explanation for why the sky had turned a sickly yellow or why snow was burying their farms in July. Without science to provide answers, people turned to religion. This inexplicable weather anomaly fueled a massive wave of religious fervor across New England. It became a powerful catalyst for what historians call the Second Great Awakening. Churches that had seen dwindling attendance for decades were suddenly packed to the doors with anxious citizens seeking divine intervention. Many viewed the relentless cold, the red sun, and the failing crops not as a mere weather pattern, but as a direct biblical judgment, a harsh punishment for a nation's sins. The sheer confusion and helpless dread of watching the natural world turn upside down, without knowing why or when it would end, left a profound psychological scar on an entire generation. The crisis of 1816 eventually triggered one of the most significant demographic shifts in American history. Beaten, starving, and terrified of another sunless season, tens of thousands of New Englanders simply abandoned their generational farms. They packed whatever they had left into covered wagons and fled westward, pushing into the wild, new territories of Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois, desperately searching for better soil and warmer climates. This mass exodus permanently reshaped the map of the United States. But the year without a summer also left a cultural legacy that extended far beyond America. Across the Atlantic in Europe, the same volcanic cloud caused endless, torrential rain and unseasonable gloom. A young writer named Mary Shelley, trapped indoors near Lake Geneva by the apocalyptic weather, challenged her friends to a ghost story contest to pass the dreary hours. Surrounded by the depressing atmosphere of that missing summer, she dreamt up the ultimate tale of mankind tampering with the natural order, creating the legendary monster of Frankenstein. The monster was, in many ways, born from the very same darkness that was starving America. By 1817, the volcanic ash in the stratosphere finally began to thin, and the sun slowly returned to its full strength. The ice melted, the crops grew again, and the world stepped back from the brink. Mount Tambora's invisible grip on the planet was finally broken. Yet, the year without a summer remains a haunting, undeniable reminder of humanity's profound fragility. We build massive cities, map the human genome, and send machines to Mars, often believing we are the absolute masters of our environment. But 1816 taught us that our entire civilization, our food supply, our economy, our stability, is utterly dependent on a delicate, invisible atmospheric balance. All it takes is one mountain on the other side of the planet to erupt, and the sun can be obscured. Now, I want you to imagine a terrifying modern scenario. With our current complex supply chains and just-in-time delivery systems, if a volcanic eruption blocked out the sun today, plunging the globe into a year-long winter, how long do you think your city could survive before the grocery store shelves were completely empty? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the dark history of extreme weather, hit that subscribe button and like the video. We will see you in the next one.